Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This is episode number 5 with Valerie Heruska. Really great, fun episode. Talk about a lot of different stuff in this one, about Val's journey and everything that she's into. So just really appreciated her time. Really did get into kind of deeper points of decision making with our careers, and then just just some fun, silly tangents and stuff. But I talked to Val before, one of the early episodes for the Student Affairs Collective podcast, which I'll link out to, and we'll link out to everything else that we mentioned in this episode as well. It's a lot of good stuff. I will not delay this any further. So after a quick message from our sponsor, this is episode number 5 with Valerie Heruska. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast because I've seen their work firsthand, and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus, as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftkick.hq.com, to learn more, and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. But yeah, I think you're probably one of the people I was seeing a lot in my feed. Was something important happened with Penn State yesterday, right? Then they win like a big,
oh my gosh,
a big
they
football
beat
game.
Michigan.
Yeah. So
The reason why it was so big was because, one, it was the first time College Game Day had been there in like 18 or something years. Like, it's been a while. But also because Penn State lost terribly to Michigan last year, 49-10.
I guess it was reversed this time too. Like this time they did very well. That's it's one of those rivalries, I suppose. Like, are they like rival? I don't know if they're like
no, they're not even rivals. It's but it was just something that Penn State was like, hey, we got to do this. This is a big game for us. So yeah.
Sometimes, it's just whatever's the thing in recent memory where it's like, oh yeah, like you said, like you beat us really bad last year, and now we've kind of like evened it out, and it's just like, go back and forth, I guess. But
but for next week it's Ohio State. Now, last year's game was a surprise victory for Penn State because we were losing, and actually I had gone to sleep because I was like, I can't watch this bloodbath anymore. I wake up to find out that they blocked the field goal and they took it and returned it for the touchdown. And you're like, what?
Yeah, of course, when you go to sleep, it's just like, you never believe what happened in that game, like right after
But luckily Twitter reminded me the next morning, oh, here's what actually happened. Okay, thanks.
Just out into the universe. Way to go, Penn State. Good on you. That's good stuff.
I actually just shouted a "We Are" on Kirkwood Avenue, which is one of our main roads here in Bloomington, because the Penn State field hockey team was getting off a bus. And I actually looked at Monica, and I was like, Monica, you want to hear something fun? And she's like, sure. So I screamed "We Are," and of course they all reply Penn State, and that's really fun when you get to do that with a bunch of people.
Yeah, just have that kind of like shared connection, the affinity, and just like all that. Because I guess I get my geography, like it's not too far. Like it is sort of like, I guess, them driving in and like playing a game. Like it's not that far. And sometimes I'm always just like, wait, Indiana, like Penn State seems like it's like a long haul, but
it's 8 hours. State
Mm-hmm.
College, Pennsylvania, and you have to go through the entire state of Ohio and pretty much halfway through Pennsylvania. So it's a haul. Because
with all the people that I've talked to, sometimes it's like states are like bigger or smaller than you think they are, kind of like driving up like the coast of California or like across Texas or something, and then it's like, like what I was saying, like I thought it would be closer, but it's like, oh yeah, you have to drive across an entire state. Like all of Ohio is like in between there. All of places I've not been. I've been to Indianapolis. I guess I was at Penn State, but that's about it for the Midwest. But geography aside, I appreciate you jumping on here because I'll have to link back to that episode. I mean, it was years ago at this point, but I really enjoyed you being on my former podcast episode for Student Affairs Collective, and I just thought of you being just a cool guest to hang out and kind of just more of like kind of a casual thing. And I know people probably will notice when they listen to this episode, but generally just trying to like, kind of more like optimistic and like enthusiasm and things that people are into and how they've kind of positively contributed to their lives and stuff. So I'm really curious to kind of learn more about that side of you. But real quick, and I'm sure people will kind of get a bit of it to listen to the prior podcast that we did, but just like Cliff Notes version of your story, kind of where you are now and what was that kind of like, because I think the biggest thing that I'm curious about now, so if you maybe want to focus on it in this way, because you've kind of like moved around a bit, so like kind of those like decision points, because I think I've recognized that for me, like I get antsy like almost every 2 years of positions I've been in, so I guess like what are those decision points been like, I guess just kind of follow your journey along to where you are now.
Sure. So when I first graduated my master's, I went to the University of South Carolina because it was so fascinating how I chose where I first wanted to work, because I was like, I want to go to a school with a big football program and maybe not in like the Big Ten, but let's try the South, because why not, right? When you first graduate, you get to be adventurous if you choose to be. So I went down to Columbia, South Carolina, or as some people like to call it, Columbia. Yeah, it's famously hot. Now it's like the Soda City. I'm like, they changed their slogan. Their Chamber of Commerce is working real hard, I suppose. And I got some really great opportunities there. I was a residence life coordinator, so your entry level housing professional. And I got to work with the athletes. And so I got like part of the football team. I got part of the soccer team for men and women. I got part of the men and women's basketball teams, the tennis team, and, just some traditional students living in apartment housing. And that was really great. I will say the football team, very interesting to work with. It's not every day you get Coach Spurrier's phone number like on your contact sheet. You're like, oh, the old ball coach. Let me just call, say hey. But then the opportunity came. I got to actually open a building. It was an honors college. And South Carolina was doing some really interesting things at the time. They really were like, nope, we're going to hop on this LLC train. And then we're going to start to really come up with these really cool initiatives within the LLC. So some of the folks that were there when I was there that came up with these are still there now, and they're doing some great things. Actually, South Carolina is really known for their residential curriculum now, which kind of spawned out of what we were doing there when I was serving in my role as RLC. But there came a time, it was after 3 years, I was just like, it's great being here. I got some really great experience, but South Carolina is just not for this girl right here. So I did a lateral move to Boston University, completely different. I had a tower of 1,000 students, and let's see, all the towers combined were like 3,000. So Warren Towers, for those of you who are listening, is a fabulous place to work as a residence life professional or student affairs professional. I learned so much from them, completely different as far as the environment that came with South Carolina. I think one of the most pinnacle points in my career, and I will always say this, has probably been during the Boston Marathon and working in Boston in a residence hall of that many people, trying to figure out and kind of navigate all crises. And so, I never really earned my residence life stripes until that day. And so it was such an unfortunate event, but as far as working through it, I couldn't have asked for a better staff, because that's truly what made it a lot easy to coordinate was the staff. And then at that point, I had been living in for about two and a half years at BU. So if you're keeping track, that's probably about 5.5, 6 years total of living in. And there just comes a point when you're like, I really can't live in anymore. Some people love it. It's great for the bills. So if you're like, nope, I just want to squander away all this money, more power to you. But for me, I was like, I can't do it anymore. And so when I started my national search, I was really looking for something more in the residence education areas. So academic initiatives, LLCs, whatever. Like, I knew that was my drive, my passion area. And so I was like, hey, there's a job at IU open. Let's apply for it. And that's what happened. And so that's really why I moved to Bloomington. Bloomington is actually a great little community in Indiana. And everybody out there is probably like, oh, Indiana. But it's not a terrible place. it's actually a great community. The people in town are just, they're quirky. Like you'll find in any small college town. I really appreciate this place for all the local businesses. We have coffee shops galore. My friend and coworker and I did a tour of all the Bloomington coffee shops over the summer, and we have kind of a blog called Brutiful Bloomington because we like puns. So we did that, and we have a distillery. We have so many local breweries. Like it's a really cool place to come visit. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm here at IU. So when I came here, I was hired to be the assistant director for living and learning centers. So I had about 11 living and learning centers underneath my belt. And then my department went through a reorg. So at one point I was doing about 2 full-time jobs. I was doing my assistant director for LLCs, but also full-time the leadership person. So I was working with Residence Hall Association, which in and of itself is a full-time job. So when we finally reorged, I'm now the assistant director for student leadership and engagement. So I have 2 grad students. I have Residence Hall Association, National Residence Hall Honorary, a specialty program we have here called the Community and Leadership Development Center, and that's a really awesome program. I also supervise 2 full-time master's level staff members, and who have 2 buildings. So yeah, a lot more underneath my area of responsibilities. But it's been good so far. It's been a great little journey.
Yeah. Well, I think because I recall, I'm pretty sure if it was on your, I feel like it was on your blog, like you wrote about like kind of that like crisis response sort of journey,
yeah.
like more specifically. So I think we'll link out to that because I think part of it, because I was at Rutgers when Hurricane Sandy hit, and like where we were certainly did not get the worst of it, but it was just that idea of, I think, because you like, were writing through kind of the thoughts and feelings about like just what it taught you as a professional and just kind of some of the nuances of things that happened during that time. And I know for me, it was like learning to trust my instincts. Like it was just the idea that, like, there's kind of baked in just some like good instincts about how to best support students, and like that really, kind of came to the top during, this very high intensity, moment. So yeah, I'll have to find that post and link out to it, because yeah, that's definitely like like you said, like kind of earning your stripes, like some sort of just like, highly urgent kind of, crisis response. I think can teach people a lot of things, and like you said, it's an awful thing that happens, but the idea that like the way that you respond to it and kind of move on from it and just, learn and grow from it, because it, anything that happens to anybody, you could kind of, I don't know, get hung up on it or just not respond in the best way. And I think, yeah, it's interesting things to think about. That way. But yeah, and it's just like the decision points for you. It's like, I don't know, for me, like part of that was part of my journey as well, of just like, because I share an affinity for New Jersey that I know you have as well.
Of course.
Like going to grad school in New Jersey, like that was like almost like a pull back. If it's like I want to be close to be back here, because that's like where my wife and a lot of our friends and her family and stuff, and like we moved away for 2 years to Maine. That was almost kind of like the South Carolina like exodus, and then you're like, okay, cool, but like let me go back to something else. Like, I mean, similarly, I don't know if it was specifically for you. Like for us, it was like we wanted to be like in a city, like just in a place with more stuff, or just like a place we felt more kind of comfortable. And certainly, where you've ended up now in Bloomington, because I think people may like take for granted having, just like you said, like all these local small businesses, like everything you could think of and everything that you would need, and just plenty to explore. Like Maine had some of that, but for whatever reason, like there was not a lot of coffee shops, and that was kind of like a bummer, where there'd be like one, and it'd just be like, I guess that's where I'll go to hang out if I want to like get a nice cup of coffee or whatever.
Oh my gosh. I will say the umbrage I do have with Bloomington, and people know about it, so this is not a surprise. There's no Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. For the record, it's just it's always gonna like be a detractor. Like
the closest one is 45 minutes away by the Indianapolis airport, and it got to a point where the same person would work when I would go to the airport. Like they're like, oh, you're that girl from Bloomington.
Right, because you would like walk up and like starry gaze, just like, oh, I'm here, just like you're that person that comes here like all the time.
They know.
Yeah, because I think that's one of those things, like a cultural touch point, so to speak, of just like those things that like, because I think like yeah, like there's a thing in Maine that we missed was like Wawas in New Jersey, and like I have them
Oh
growing up in
man.
Delaware, and like those things. So like it's almost, it seems silly, but I feel like those are like they capture the emotional like sort of anchor that people have to certain places and why they like make decision points to like, you know, certainly you go off and have kind of the adventure, you go off to somewhere else to see what that's like, but it may ultimately end up having you like further appreciate the things that you had, you know, where you were originally, like, and whether it's like you go there back there specifically or seek that out, you know, somewhere else where, you know, a good opportunity like at Indiana University maybe. Because yeah, it sounds like, you know, you planted seeds of like living and learning communities and kind of working, because I know like for me, if I were to ever go back into res life, ideally it would be in those sort of capacities where it's like, because you know, typically a lot of people are just kind of in that operational like running a building, but like
Right.
all the stuff that you kind of like supplement it and kind of augment it with in terms of like student leadership or living and learning communities and those sort of things, it's like for me that's like more exciting to where like running a building comes pretty intuitively, but
Yeah.
I'd want to, you know, have more of that challenge. So it's cool that you kind of found that somewhere else. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess like with that, like kind of for where you are now, you know, you've been there for a little while. Like, what is it about that that you enjoy more, you know, most about the job that you do now, and kind of just like talk through that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard being in the mid level. Like, I'm not gonna lie. So, anybody who's listening who is entry level, thinking about going to mid level, or someone who's even mid level right now and being like, man, this is challenging. They're not wrong. So, I think one of the favorite parts about my job right now, and just looking at where I am, is hopefully and trying to little day by day is being that disruptor um, in my role, and it's interesting because if you think about Big Ten programs, so Rutgers, if you Rutgers full of history.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about IU, they're Big Ten programs with a lot of tradition, a lot of history, and the challenge to kind of think differently. Um, and so I like to think that I am from the outside coming in, which I am. I would say 95% of my residence life team at the mid level and above has some sort of IU connection or has been here for like 30 years. So as the only non-IU person coming in, I feel it's my role to be the disruptor. So I think that's what I enjoy most, and it's challenging. And the reason I say that is because at what point in our careers as student affairs professionals, specifically residence life professionals, are we allowed that title of disruptor? Because you would think that that's someone from like the director level who can make most of the change. But I think some of it has to start at that mid level is like, okay, this is what we're observing. This is what's going on. Now, how can we just tweak it a little bit to make it better?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's probably one of my favorite parts. I mean, another favorite part is actually is supervising. I never thought I would say that, but it's been great. From supervising my master's level professional full time staff members to my grad students, like, gosh, they just bring so much to the table. They're just all smart individuals, and I'm very fortunate enough to work with these people every day. They're some of the best and the brightest, and watch out for these graduate students that I have. They're going to make such a great impact on this world. Like the things they are teaching me about what they're learning in their classes, I'm like, can you just send me your readings? Because sometimes we don't, as professionals, we don't get that opportunity to read and keep current on all the trends. So that's why I'm very fortunate that my grads are like, yes, please read this and then tell us what it's about. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. They read, they're good eggs. So yeah, those have to be some of my favorite parts is just kind of getting in there and trying to figure out how to make our department more efficient, I think, how to bring new ideas to the table and just supervision. They're such
Mm-hmm.
great, it's easy when you have good people to work with.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm sure for where you're at now, because yeah, like if you're sort of the middle management, you kind of you're in certain meetings where you can definitely like advocate for things, but you're still, you know, directly supervising the people right there, kind of on the front lines. And I think as much as my inclination, yeah, because I like sort of coming up with ideas and doing those sort of things, and I'm also at certain times like very impatient, which is weird because like
Yeah.
most of the time in my life I'm patient, but then like if it's like, oh, let's do this new thing, I'm like, yeah, well, let's just like do it now. Let's just like go ahead and start doing it. Everybody agrees it's a great idea. But I would like because it's very much harder to do that if you're kind of like, yeah, I've been here for a couple months. I think that I have all the best ideas. And even if you're kind of getting some support on it, it can still be difficult. So you've been there for like enough time that I would hope and I would think that like you kind of have that like kind of basis to be like, I've seen everything go through like a couple of times, like a few academic years, and sort of like taking up that mantle and feeling like, that's something that you sort of aspire to is definitely cool. And you kind of feel like, I guess you have a little bit of that kind of room to stretch out and do that. And I know, like with the supervision stuff too, that's like, for me, like it would feel very affirming if the next step for me had something like that, because I've only ever supervised student staff, and I'm still at a level now being essentially like an academic advisor. Like I don't have anybody under me. I'm just sort of like chasing down students and being like, hey, make sure you register. Is everything going okay? Like, talk to me. So like if I were to be like, okay, at the next point, even if it's like me and I'm supervising one person, like a graduate student or like a, full-time professional or something, it'd be like, okay, I feel like I'm like getting to that next thing, versus like kind of existing at, and again, I guess it's partially me, but just feeling like I'm in this one rung for a long time. And I definitely have the sort of the gumption, for lack of a better term, or like ambition. Like I'm kind of like, I want it. I want to like it's like I want to feel uncomfortable. I want to like, struggle through kind of learning that stuff, because it's just like, I feel like for me, I don't know, maybe almost you want to focus on this for a moment. I'd be curious what you'd say, but that I think it's really hard where like, yeah, getting to that next place, like you're saying, like people who are, entry level trying to go to mid level, and that, experience for you where it can kind of be hard at times. But I feel like it's hard for like me at this point for me to like break through, because you almost have to be like, trust me, I can manage someone full time, even though I've never done it before.
Sure.
So like, how do you, compel that? So I guess like, what was that maybe experience like for you in terms of like, I know your job kind of changed. So I don't know if that was kind of where you sort of just slid into it, or kind of what that journey was like.
Yeah, actually, that was probably the hardest part, is trying to convince people that, yes, I can transfer the skills I have from supervising an undergraduate student or graduate student to a full-time staff member. And I think when you go on interviews and you're like, here's the experience that I bring, you really have to make it transferable. So, of course, I didn't have any full-time. I never supervised full-time staff before, but because I could be like, well, here are the skills that I used with my undergrad, and I can see myself using this with a professional staff member in the same essence. I think it's more about your supervision style versus the actual tangible. I supervised already. It's great that you did, but if you cannot speak confidently about how you supervise, then it's kind of just null and void, I think, at that point. And that's something hard, because my supervision style is dependent on the person. But at the very core, it's like getting to know the person for who they are. They're people first, and not just your employees or those that you supervise. So take a very personal and collaborative approach to mine. So if anybody wants to know my supervision style, that's it. And some people are like, well, supervising through authenticity. I'm like, that's a great way too. So I think as long as you're able to talk about how you supervise, even if you don't have professional supervision experience, there's some transferable skill that you can talk about. That's how you have to do it. Now, it was a little bit easier for me, because when they reorged, I then got people to supervise. So I was like, oh, so it's really like, okay, well, here we are again. I hadn't supervised anybody for about, I guess, 2 years prior. Like, I took 2 years off of supervising. It was kind of nice, but that was my job. But my job was also big when you have 11 LLCs and then 5 staff members per LLC. It's a lot. So, so I didn't get to take a break from that. But coming back into supervision, it's like, okay, getting back on this bike again, and here's what you have to do. You just have to be confident in what you do.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, it's that they're not mutually exclusive skill sets, and I think for me, I'm like shortchanging myself if it's like you can just speak about those things confidently, where it's like, yeah, if you take it seriously and say like, yeah, I've been managing human beings, and like, yeah, they happen to be like undergraduate students who are like working part-time, whatever, but yeah, like being confident in that what you've learned from that and like the style that you've developed is kind of worthwhile and kind of has like, credibility and stuff. So That's interesting.
Absolutely.
I think that like
It's all about telling your story.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, to shift gears a little bit, so this is I'm very curious to hear um, sort of the things that you geek out about, and it could be very,
Yeah.
very open ended, I guess, but just like, what do you geek out about currently, and have you always been into it? Is it a new discovery? Is it something that you've been into for as long as you can remember? Just, any number of things that you're currently enthusiastic
These
about.
these were really tough questions. I'm sorry, but I was like, what do I geek out? I geek out. So you caught me at a really good time because I did just come back. On a professional level, I did just come back from Residential Curriculum Institute. So currently, I am geeking out about that because it's really awesome. I think the more and more schools that incorporate a curriculum into whatever functional area they work in, I think the better off they're going to be. I think it's a breath of fresh air. Um, the article. So before you attend the Residential Curriculum Institute, you get like a binder's worth of readings to do. And so one of the articles just kept going on about how they're in it to kind of change the way we've always been like programming and selecting staff members and RAs and things like that. Like, it's really cool and really fascinating. And the people who put on the residential curriculum, so it's through ACPA, the presenters, the faculty, oh my God, they were so great. So I'm really geeking out about that. So, but on a personal level, I guess, what am I geeking out about? That was really challenging. Star Wars. I'm geeking about Star Wars because episode 8 is coming out in December, and I already have my tickets. Dustin, do you have your tickets?
The timing is bad, so I'm going on like a trip with my job. We have like an immersion for our students that opening weekend, so I'm still like thinking about like, okay, so can I do it like while I'm there, or can I do it like right when I come back and stuff? So yeah, forgive me, everyone. I maybe by the time this airs, I will have gotten them, but as of this moment, I have not. Totally respect it because I've gotten I got my Thor Ragnarok tickets because I usually am one of those people that like I like I know I'm gonna see it and I want to like book it and then I can look forward to it and like just be like, all right, like that's when it's happening versus like trying to make it happen like the day of or something like, oh, let me go like get tickets or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm gonna buy it like weeks in advance. I'm sure any day now I will. But yeah, I mean, like we're experiencing a renaissance of Star Wars. So
oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And so I guess to answer, how long have I been geeking out about Star Wars? I mean, since I was born, I guess. my mom was pregnant with me and she took my brother to go see one of those movies. I forget which one was out.
Yeah. Well, then they re-released all of them too, so it could be hard to just think. What was that? What was like?
When was that?
Yeah.
But so I guess I've been geeking out about Star Wars all my life. I think it's just so cool and just it's just such an awesome movie. I'm like, I can't even talk about it. I'm like so geeking out.
Yeah, there's so much stuff because it's almost like if we want to go down that tangent of just like, okay, well, tell me about all of your favorite parts. I think. Yeah.
We can spend hours and people would stop listening.
It's like, oh, it's a 2.5 hour episode. Oh, okay, well, I gotta like break this up into chunks.
Those hardcore podcasters would listen. I think I geek out about coffee. So like I said, my friend and I went around Bloomington and we tried every coffee shop. Also, I think people get a kick out of how I say that word, so I think that's part of like the fun part, because my true Jersey essence comes out whenever I say that word. But I love it. I don't know what I love about it. So I think the smells. I think it's just comforting, and yes, the caffeine boost is very, very welcomed in my world. But so many, I don't like hip and trendy places. We have a lot of those in Bloomington. And every now and then I'll get like a vanilla latte. Like, they're delightful. But at the end of the day, I like my coffee black like my heart. So, in fact, I'm thinking that maybe one day, and I know you have like a future question on here, but here's what I would love to do one day is just to open up my own coffee shop, but the people who would work there are people who are just getting out of jail. And so I would hire them into my coffee shop just to give them a fresh start, because I think every person deserves a second chance at a good life. So that's what I would do. and then maybe, and so somebody's going to steal this. Somebody's going to listen to this podcast and steal this idea. I want to be like the Chipotle of coffee shops, where you come in, you have a variety of beans, and we will roast them and then brew them on demand for you.
That's something. There's something there. Yeah.
There's something there, and somebody's going to steal it.
Well, but we also have this recorded on a thing. Like, you said the idea, so we could sort of, I feel like, I mean, you have to like maybe register for a copyright. I don't know. Maybe someone can reply with how this works, intellectual property. But
there we go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's because there's like a place that I found. I think they make the brownies that Ben and Jerry's uses in their ice cream, like Greystone Bakery. That like, and it's a shame that like a place has to, like how you're saying, like be so purposeful, where it's like, we are going to hire people who have gotten out of prison recently, like, because generally people just see that and they're like, but no, you're not going to get hired, because they'll make all the assumptions and stuff. So yeah, I think it's and then there's so many other things like that of just like hiring veterans and just like, I love stuff like that, because it's like, again, ideally we would live in a world where like things like that don't have to exist, but I think that's because I think that's like, I think a lot of people have ideas like that, and I think ideas like that, if you very much like kind of methodically work towards that, because I think even doing something like going around to a bunch of coffee shops, like you've seen, like I like how they do that, like this seems to work really well, and it's like you work towards that where you're playing the long game, because I think some people, like I said, like I can get impatient with like doing stuff, and sometimes it works great and other times it doesn't, where if we work too quickly towards something without really like you let the adrenaline almost rule, it's just like, what, let's just like figure out how this all works, so it'll be cool, like you have this idea, and like eventually like sort of being what you're looking forward to in the future, like not an exact date, but someday maybe.
Listen, I already have like the interior design plans for this place. I mean, so that's something else I geek out about, is like interior design, because right now I live in a 500 square foot apartment with beige walls. So what's not to geek out about interior design, because I can't do that just yet. So yeah, I already know I'm going to have exposed brick. I'm going to make it very like natural. So I'm going to have a lot of natural elements, like exposed wood beams. It's going to be so beautiful.
Yeah.
And a big roaster. Oh, I'm so excited. And barista school. So I was like, oh, you can be a certified barista. And I'm like, okay, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, because I would say like I kind of lightly geek out about coffee, because like I kind of get, maybe I just need to like purposefully kind of experience it, but I kind of get intimidated by like the different origin beans and the like all these like complex flavor profiles, which like now that I'm like thinking out loud, because I love craft beer, and certainly like I just am this kind of like dedicated amateur, like just kind of like I don't really know all the lingo yet. I keep learning more and figuring out like the kind of things that I like. So I just would have to apply that same thing to coffee. So it gives me a little bit of support now, like thinking out loud. But yeah, so just for the record, because I do enjoy a good coffee shop. I'm more of an iced coffee guy, like a good cold brew. Usually
delicious.
Do like like coffee, like an iced coffee with soy milk, maybe a little like sweetener of some sort. Because that's also a problem of mine. It's not really like a geek out. It's really an affliction, is that I have a sweet tooth and I can't help it. I used to have like my coffee just loaded with like creamer and sugar, and just like, now I'm thinking back, I'm like, that was a lot. That was like an obscene, a gratuitous amount of sugar that I would used to put. Like, and I was a kid too. just like craving and I'm hungry for it, but now it's like, as an adult, I'm just like, I can't do that anymore. Like, and I'd have like 2 cups a day of just this like, it's too much. I mean, it tasted delicious, but
of course it did.
Not good in the not good in the long run. But and I like that you covered a gamut of things of just like what you geek out about professionally, and because I think that's sort of at the core and sort of the spirit of this, is that because I think for me, I'm still searching for it, but that idea of like the enthusiasm that people have about the things that they geek out about kind of in their everyday lives, trying to find the things that we're enthusiastic about and find the things that we're good at and try to find the union of those. So if it is opening up your own coffee shop or something, but for me, I realized that like I'm good at writing and trying to find like things that I can write about that I'm enthusiastic about, and doing stuff like this, like the podcast and all that. So that's what I try to encourage, or I want to encourage people with this endeavor. So I guess with those things or anything else that you can think of like the things that you geek out about. So I know that you're an avid runner and stuff like that. Obviously, that has a pretty direct correlation of like a
Oh
positive.
yeah. Do you want to see this? Look at that. I took
Yeah.
all my racing bibs and put them on canvas.
Right. There you go. Yeah. It looks, 'cause, yeah, like stuff like that. It's like,
That's art.
yeah, like, so like, yeah, with like running obviously has like a pretty direct, like positive contribution, but like anything else, like with the love of coffee or anything else, like how have those things, your hobbies and interests positively contributed to your life?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You said coffee positively. It does. It just makes me a nicer person.
Right. Yeah. Without it, I'm a completely different person. Yeah.
I need one of those mugs that says, "Do not talk to me."
Right.
Okay, you can like chat with me. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, like the warming thing. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
just, yeah. Yeah.
Something that another hobby. So, every day, okay, well, every Monday through Friday, I do go to the gym. But what I like about this gym, it's not like I'm gonna go lift weights. I am part of a fitness club, I guess. It's called Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping, and it's a regional gym. So they have gyms in Iowa, Nebraska, Indiana, Illinois, and I think like one in Texas. And it's great because it breaks up your week. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it's kickboxing, and every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday morning, if you're a morning person, it's strength train days. So they alternate between upper body and lower body strength training using resistance bands. And you're like, oh, how much of a workout can you get with resistance bands? Let me tell you, you can get a really good workout with resistance bands. In fact, it's so good that even Tom Brady, for those of you who follow the New England Patriots, the face I'm making is not a positive one, but Tom Brady, I read somewhere that he has like his book TB12 or something coming out like that, but in it, part of his workout regimen is using resistance band strength training. So if it's good enough for Tom Brady, it's great for me. So I like to think I'm on the same level as Tom Brady.
Hey, yeah. If you ever met him, you could talk about that,
Never, right. Well, he went to Michigan. That's never going to happen.
Like, Val, it's Tom Brady. It's like, I just can't. Like,
I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
So I like it because it keeps me so sane. Kicking and punching a bag is probably the best release ever. So it's great. Strength training is great too. In fact, it actually helped me get faster in my running. So now I haven't been on a run in a while, but when I was training for my last half marathon when did I run that? April. It was the end of April. I ran like a 7:21 mile, and I was like, where did that come from? But it's because strength training helps you build up muscle mass, and it's great. So I have been doing it since I started in January, and so I've still been doing it. It's probably the longest committed thing I've done. So it's been really awesome. So that has definitely positively influenced my life. I think getting out and going outside more when the weather is beautiful. Bloomington has some of the best parks, outdoor trails. That's one of the main reasons why I moved here too, not only for the job, but because it was so nice to get out of a city. And there are days that I totally miss living in a city. Trust me, the public transportation, even though, the T was terrible, the metro is not good either, but it's okay. I miss it. But there are days when I'm like, I can go down 2 miles down the road and go kayaking on a lake and watch it's gorgeous. So I think just being outside more, getting outside away from the technology has just been so good for my soul. It's just made my life better. And so every weekend I try and go on hikes. So we have a lot of state parks around here. And so someone will go with me, or I just go by myself. It's fine. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I think because like those things, I would consider them like hobbies. Like they help make the time that you have free, meaningful, and they like easily positively contribute to your life just to unplug and be active and just like, get some fresh air and those sort of things. So Yeah, that's all good stuff. So I mean, yeah, you go out for a good hike and go get a good cup of coffee or something afterwards, or because that's like that sounds like a great day to me. Like
That's usually my Saturday. To be honest, that's usually my Saturday mornings, where I will go to a coffee shop and then go hiking, or vice versa, depending on what time the Penn State football game is, of course. But that's only from August to December, so.
Yeah. Well, so for example, if you're at your local coffee shop or wherever, you have free time, like is there anything that you're reading, watching, listening to, anything that's kind of grabbing your interest lately?
I made a list because this was going to be really hard for me to come up on the spot. So, things I am listening to. So a lot of podcasts. So we have Modern Romance, which was the Aziz Ansari book, but the actual podcast is pretty darn fabulous. Pod Save America. I think people have heard of that one. Mm-hmm. It's really awesome. My Favorite Murder.
Yeah. That's very popular, I know, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. Dear Sugars. Have you heard it?
My wife likes it, yeah, I listen to it with her.
Yeah. It's a tearjerker. I remember, so I just did a round trip from Bloomington to New Jersey, which is about 12 hours each way. And I'm sitting in the car, like tears just rolling down my face because, these letters are something. And then this one comes from NPR, It's How I Built This, where they interview people like the CEOs of major corporations, and they're like, we did this in companies, so it's really awesome. So I don't read as much as I would love to. I read the news every day. I read Washington Post, The Atlantic, Reddit. Oh my gosh, Reddit's like the black hole of awesome. Just sit on it for hours. But so I came up with the last 3 books that I read. Villa Incognito by Tom Robbins. So Tom Robbins writes some really good books, and that was the first one I just finished. Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham, so Lorelai Gilmore. It's a good book. It's like junk food for your eyes, I suppose. And then In the Country We Love, My Family Divided. One of the actresses from Orange is the New Black wrote this book. And it talks about how her family, like her parents were deported, and how she had to grow up in the United States without a family. So very, very powerful book right there. And then for fun, the New York Regional Mormon Singles Halloween Dance. Those were my last 4 books that I read. So I do enjoy reading. That mostly happened over the summer, because then training came, and then I had to read things for Residential Curriculum Institute. So hopefully, with the holidays coming up, some longer breaks in there. Hopefully, I get more books. I'm like 546 for What Happened by Hillary Clinton. So I'll be waiting a while for that one. Thanks, Bloomington. But I'm glad people want to read. There are 8 copies, and I'm like number 500. That's ridiculous. So. I'm like, are there 500 people in Bloomington? Yes, there are 80. There are actually 80,000. So I learned that from the mayor when he came to speak like a few months ago. He's like, Bloomington citizens, 80,000 strong. I was like, really? That's without the students too. So I was very impressed.
Right.
What I am watching, so that's a little challenging. So I love if it's on, which it always is on, Law and Order, SVU. I don't know why. This Is Us. Oh, because who doesn't need a good cry every now and then? That show is everything. And I love The Good Place. Have you ever The Good Place?
Yeah, I just watched through it like last month, yeah.
Oh, it is a hoot and a half. We're in the bad place. So, what the fork, right? So those are, and Bob's Burgers. How could I forget Bob's Burgers? Big fan. Tina Belcher, 20 for president, 2020.
Yeah. That's all good stuff. And I know, like, I feel like Bob's Burgers has moved around, like, streaming stuff, but, like, like, if somebody needs, like, just a great new comedy, that's a good one, because, I mean, it's been on for a long time, and it's, like, very referential. Like, I'm rewatching Arrested Development right now, and just like I've been away from it for a long time, and just like revisiting it, I'm just like this is just because it very much captures like one of my favorite things, like being smartly stupid. Like it's one of my favorite, because like Bob's Burgers does that with like all the puns and just like, you know, random like references and stuff. Like that's my favorite, like kind of pinpointed kind of vibe. But yeah, I mean that's all good stuff. Yeah, we'll link out to everything, and I think because that's the thing for me is like, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's like you have such a like kind of rich and full diet of like podcasts and books and all that. And like for me, yeah, like reading usually falls to the bottom of the totem pole, where like it takes me a good while to get through a book, because I'll try to like keep up with my shows that are currently on, and maybe I'm working through some other show, or like, you know, watching the occasional like movie on Netflix or at the theater or whatever. So yeah, like podcasts are pretty like, yeah, on drives, I'm doing the dishes, I'm doing laundry, or like, you know, on my lunch break, and then yeah, I love like coming home and then just like watching my shows, and maybe try to like read a chapter before bed, but then sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to do it. But then I also like trying to read comic books and stuff too, so like try to flip flop around. But
I think I have it. Well, I can't find my. I usually my MacBook's on my coffee table, and usually I have my Kamala Khan with me, but Ms. Marvel, but I can't seem to find it. I forgot podcast On Being with Krista Trippett. That's a good one too.
Cool. Yeah. So you alluded, I guess, more so to kind of an aspirational, you know, like a dream of yours with the coffee shop and stuff, but just anything else in terms of like something that's releasing. I mean, you mentioned Star Wars is something that you're looking forward to, just like kind of ending on a positive note. Like, what are things in your life, maybe personal, maybe professional, things that you are looking forward to?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm looking forward to, so I'm doing a little bit of traveling in the upcoming months, New Jersey, because the holidays, and Ma Heruska would be very upset if I did not come home. So can't make my mother upset. Then I am going to, actually in a few weeks, I am going to Nebraska, because I'm trying to hit up every Big Ten football stadium. So I am going to watch Nebraska Cornhuskers take on the Northwestern Wildcats.
So it's a mouthful, those names.
No Penn State. So the Nebraska Penn State game is in State College on the day we close our building. So I'm like, why? But that's okay. So yeah, it's gonna be. I never thought, as someone from the East Coast, I'd be going to Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm sure it's a wonderful place. And so I will have to take pictures.
Just to be like proof, like, I'm here, you guys. I was not. Like,
I'm here. Yeah. I'm in Nebraska. I once did, like, I drove through it once. I did a road trip from Oregon to South Carolina, and we drove through Nebraska. I was like, oh, it's flat. But my goal is to actually do a race in every state, so I think I have to go back eventually to run the race there, because there aren't any races that time. So yeah, two big, like, I guess, life goals is to visit every Big Ten campus and maybe attend a football game. So check that one off. A life goal, like a personal goal, is to run a race in every state. I have the majority of the East Coast done. I'm not going to say all, because I have not run a race in Maine or Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I know. I'm like, oh wait, I guess I don't have most of it done.
It's more like New England. Yeah, it's all those like little states.
I've done New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and well, those are mid-Atlantic states. Pennsylvania, Florida. So yeah, I have a little ways to go on the East Coast. I've done Indiana, Illinois, Tennessee, believe it or not. I never thought I'd say that. And Canada. So
yeah. Well, I think it's nice to have those North Stars, like the guiding points for doing stuff. Because for me, it's like, yeah, like visiting campuses in general, and then like drinking like local craft beer or something. You know, like it's like, if you get a flavor for the place, like you do a race, you're probably hopefully racing in a place that looks nice. You're seeing like, you know, that area. Yeah.
It is a great way to see like a new place. I didn't know Nashville was as hilly as it actually is, and so I was like, oh, this should be flat and fast. No, it was quite the opposite. It was one of the hardest half marathons I've ever ran, and I trained for it in Bloomington where it's just as hilly, but forget it. On a humid, hot, sultry day, it was something. Um, I guess another like life goal is I would love to get back to the East Coast, anywhere between DC and Boston. My family's there. I feel like that's where I fit the best. Now, granted, I've not lived in every place in this great United States, but I feel like that, home is where your heart is, and that's where my heart is. And that's probably where I would best. So maybe, hopefully within the next few years, I get to transition back there. I think more or less in thinking about my trajectory in higher ed, student affairs, I think about this constantly. And I think about what I'm really good at, and maybe kind of what I thought I was good at, which I am good at, but kind of don't really seem enthusiastic about it anymore. I think maybe moving into something that is higher ed adjacent, so leaving the field. I think that's okay. It's not for everybody, and I think about that every day. Like, how can I help improve something? Maybe it's taking a step outside of it. So yeah. I don't know. If I had a crystal ball, I wish I could tell you. And getting a dog. That's what I want to get. That's my future goal. Get a dog, get a house, and drink my coffee. So
it's all good stuff. Yeah, because we just adopted a dog like within the last week. Yeah. Yeah, it's like she's like an older dog, like, and her given name is Chelsea, but I continually describe her as this like sweet little old mama. Like, she's probably like 4 or 5 years old. She's clearly given birth a few times, and it was just like a like surrender by the owner and stuff. So it's like, oh, maybe she got old. But then like we're having her now for like a week, and it's like, how could someone have given her up? Like, she's so well behaved, and she's like a snuggler and all that. But yeah, because I think like I had pets growing up, and I forgot how much of just like, in their own way, that kind of just adds that little bit to your life kind of thing. So it's nice. Yeah, certainly getting used to a new routine, like checking in on her like throughout the day, because I'm super close with my office. But yeah, it's like definitely a good thing to look forward to. And I think, yeah, because so I'll probably just link out to it just because it's good, like food for thought on kind of what you're leaving on with like the Defector series, which I contributed to this kind of series 2. Because there's
that Alma Marfro always thinking of awesome things.
Yeah, and I think just being this sort of what's the word I want to use, but just like sort of this gathering place, people sharing their stories of how they, again, sort of those decision points of why they kind of moved into a different sort of higher ed role and stuff like that. So I think I'm always an advocate for that. And I think for me it is, just generally, like, I've been where I am now for almost 2 years, and I think it's a bit of what you alluded to and kind of figuring out the next step is like, certainly, utilizing our strengths is important, but like, for me, it is sometimes, because that was like sort of with Res Life, is that like, well, I think I'm good at this, but it's not challenging anymore. So that's where I sort of get like restless, is like, okay, I've done everything and I feel like I do it well. Like, now what's next? And then sometimes it's like, there's value in just like, okay, you do this well, just keep doing it. Like, just keep doing that for a while. But I've recognized in myself, like, after about like 2 years, I'm just like, okay, like, what's going on? Like, and at times I need to like quiet that part, and maybe like, this endeavor is partially like channeling the energy another way, where I was kind of feeling restless, and it's like, I think I'm okay for right now. There's some other transitions coming up, so let me like give that time and put this energy into something else that I do enjoy doing. I feel like it is a strength of mine and stuff like that. So and it's that weird thing, is like, as much as it's like, I don't know, like I get my ego wrapped up in it, or I think about it a lot, in that same way, where it's always just kind of swirling and just like, what should I be doing? Like, what's next? Like, what am I like? It's always just sort of like swirling around in there, and hopefully keep it at a simmer and not have it like boil over, where you're just like, existential crisis. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life, but because I guess it's good if it's a simmer, because I think it makes sure that you're utilizing your time and making efforts that are sort of purposeful and moving towards something, versus just like, if you're kind of just doing things, which is great, but just doing them and there's not like connective tissue and stuff like that. So, long tangent. Professional career trajectories are, it's complex. It's because I think for me too, it's like, I've only been doing stuff for a couple of years, and I have to also be like, it's okay if you're not like, master of all, after like
Right.
4 years. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's all the stuff I'm sure just throughout all these episodes, because just kind of the alignment of enthusiasms and strengths and just, all that stuff, figuring out how people are kind of making sense of all that. So, I wish you luck and kind of all that
Thanks.
stuff. But hopefully you get to explore a few new places soon. You're taking a couple trips and stuff here in the near future. So because I think I'll have to, because like I was saying, I have the immersion for our students. It's in California. I've not tried a local California beer, I don't think. Maybe I did. So I'll have to make sure that like reminded me, because that's like my guiding point. So but so everything we talked about, I'll make sure to get in the show notes. A lot of cool stuff for people to check out. But thank you so much, Val, for hanging out and chatting. It's always a good time. And just have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks. You too.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.